Once again, Christmas was approaching. And once again, Nicholas realized that it was a holiday that invariably brought him back to his childhood. Because, no matter how old you are, on these winter days, you still expect joy and miracles. Of course, if a pensioner paid no attention to dates or even to seasons, and went to bed peacefully at 10 p.m. on any day, including Christmas, there would be no joy. On the contrary, annoyance at all those people who walk, make noise, shout, and under the window, and in the apartments above and below. And outside the window, they blow up firecrackers. Where are the police looking? But Nicholas wanted to keep the holiday atmosphere for himself, and he succeeded, and he did it not only for himself, but also in the hope of seeing his son. They hadn't seen each other for 15 years. Well, at least on this holiday. Why not remember his father? Not to drop in for a visit? That's why Nicholas bought a live fir tree every year. What's the use of an artificial one? But even if you take it away in the middle of winter, then sometimes in summer, you'll find a needle stuck in a crack of the parquet floor, and you'll think, I wish it were Christmas. Not the one that is to come, but the one that had passed long ago, in which Melissa is alive and young, and little Justin, who has opened his trusting eyes to gifts. And the box of toys, Nicholas pulled out the old one from the closet. The toys, the garlands, were from my son's childhood, from the happiest of times, when his wife Melissa was still alive. They used to decorate the Christmas tree with these very toys. Each one was touched with the fingers of Melissa and son Justin. He never bought any new toys. Why? The old ones were enough. Besides, they were very memorable. He wiped the dust off the old box, opened it, and delved into the past. Here's one of the oldest toys. It's 50 years old, and it's still in perfect condition. It's just a little worn, that's all. Santa Claus is Justin's favorite toy. It's getting colder outside. It was snowing. By Christmas night, it might finally be real winter. Nicholas took out the toys, carefully unwrapped them, and hung them on the tree. Each one had a piece of his happy old life in it. And what a happy life it was! As soon as he and Melissa were married, they lived soul to soul, young, still believing in a better future, that they would be happy. Unbelievable, but they were. A great love united them. No, everyday life was an obstacle to their feelings. But what a life. At first they lived in a small room without any conveniences. It's funny and strange to think about now. But was it possible to live like that? A typical old apartment, a long corridor filled with all kinds of garbage, cockroaches, violent neighbors, heating and water problems. But in general, it was a fun and harmless time. They lived amicably with our neighbors and with each other. It did not matter that there was almost no money at the time. They did not need it. It was so much fun on the old worn-out couch, and it was not too crowded to sleep, have breakfast and lunch. Any trip for two in transport turned into an exciting journey. It seemed that it would always be like this, and so it was. Melissa was never bored. She knew how to turn any day into a holiday. Then, when they bought a new apartment, they shared a common sadness. At first, a little bewilderment, then anxiety, then resentment of fate. They had no children. It was strange. Everything seemed fine. So why not? Those who were married the same year as them are already walking with children. And here they are taking them to kindergarten, and here they are taking their firstborn to first grade, and taking the secondborn in a stroller. And they do not have one. Of course, they went to doctors, but they got nothing. Melissa even went to some psychic. She read some incantations, gave him some water in a bottle, brought a huge ficus in his apartment, put willow branches in all the corners. All this supposedly helped. But no, it did not. It wasn't until Melissa was 40 years old, and Nicholas was 3 years older than his wife, that a miracle suddenly did happen, and Justin was born. Nicholas himself could not believe his happiness. "Melissa, is it really true? And we have a son," he would sometimes ask, standing by the crib, admiring his miracle. "And he didn't believe he was coming?" His wife smiled playfully. "I never doubted for a minute. All kinds of miracles are possible with you. But when a dream comes true, it's still hard to believe." Time passed quickly after the birth of their son, and happiness gathered pace. Of course, Justin, like most long-awaited only children, was spoiled beyond measure by both his parents. He did not turn out to be a typical bully. The boy studied diligently, played sports and music, and caused no trouble either for his parents or for his teachers. And then tragedy struck, which ruined their whole life. Melissa's mother lived out of town, in a small village. More than once, Melissa called her mother to move to the city, but to no avail. It is difficult for elderly people to leave a familiar place. She lived with her equally lonely sister. Melissa regularly visited her mother, brought her groceries, and helped her in any way she could. It was a long way, nearly 500 kilometers, so she decided not to wait for the bus one day, but to take the car with her acquaintances, which would have been much quicker. But this time, it turned out that Melissa did not make it. On the way, the tired driver fell asleep at the wheel and drove into the oncoming lane. Nicholas remembered that call from the hospital for the rest of his life. His wife was still alive, but her condition was critical. He managed to get there, to catch his beloved wife alive and conscious, to hear her last words. "Take care of Justin." After which Melissa passed away in his arms. What happened next, he remembered vaguely. The funeral, the wake. It had all passed him by, and the memories of Melissa, alive and young, and of their happy life, which would never be again, swirled in his mind. Unable to comprehend the misfortune that had befallen them, Justin sometimes brought his father back to reality. "It's okay, son. We're together," he muttered. "Mommy loves you. She'll always be there for you." Where is Near? Why isn't she there? Why did this have to happen to Mom? After all, she was the best. But Nicholas did not know the answers to his son's sorrowful questions, and he could not comfort him or give him confidence in himself, for he himself was shattered, crushed by the enormity of the misfortune that had fallen on him. But as time passed, it smoothed out his grief, allowing him to move on with his life. Nicholas tried to maintain the way of life as it had been under his wife, and it worked, but only outwardly. Something important was missing from their relationship with his son, who was just a child, as if the mother were a kind of connecting link. Father and son did not quarrel, did not become strangers. They just distanced themselves from each other somehow, experiencing their grief alone. The first quarrel with the clarification of the relationship occurred just before Christmas. The first without his mother and wife. Nicholas, as usual, bought a Christmas tree and groceries for cooking, but his son remained indifferent. "Come on, son, help me out. The holiday is coming, so we have to celebrate in one way or another." I wonder if any of us had died. Would Mom be preparing for the holiday the same way today? Asked Justin wryly. Maybe. My father was confused by such a question. Well, anyway, she's always wished us well, and I think she'd want us to get on with our lives as before, instead of sitting around looking dejected for the rest of our lives. She doesn't want anything anymore, and she never will, and will never have anything anymore. You understand? No, you can dress up as Santa Claus if you want to, but I'm not going to pretend to be anybody. Calm down, Justin. We'll be alone. A lot of people live like this. I'm scarier than you. I've lived with my mother longer. She was the only one for me. You'll have your own family someday and be happy. And I'll be alone forever. You mean Mom died because she was already old? Why? Why did you give birth to me then? You both knew that old people always die. We weren't old, understand? No one was going to die. We waited too long for you, that's all. Too bad I came into this world, Justin said, and left the room. He didn't spend Christmas with his father. He just locked himself in his room. Nicholas heard footsteps outside the door, heard that his son was watching some kind of movie, but he didn't dare go, in fear of being rude again. He knocked, called to the table, heard no answer, and left. Maybe he should have come in, embraced his son, cried with him, but it seemed unnecessary to the man. The father celebrated Christmas alone and went to bed. After that, the estrangement only grew, and for the next 5 years, father and son only nurtured their not-so-great attitude toward each other. Moreover, it coincided with the onset of the boy's difficult adolescence. For a boy who had lost his mother, this period was very difficult. By the age of 15, Justin had become a completely uncontrollable boy. He abandoned his studies, disappeared into the unknown, began smoking, and sometimes in the evening, his father smelled alcohol on his child. Of course it worried him. He understood his son, but he did not know how to influence him. He tried to do his duties, to earn money, to keep the house in order. He even tried to talk to Justin, explaining what such behavior could lead to, but in vain. The young man understood everything, but he resisted any conversation. He did not tolerate moralizing. Nicholas was ashamed of him at parents' meetings and understood that the teachers could hardly influence his son either. There was no authority for Justin. I don't understand how you can treat your life that way, Nicholas said. Don't you realize that it'll be too difficult, if not impossible, to fix something later? How can I understand you? Said Justin. You're what, 45 years older than me? How can you remember what happens at 15? I also do not understand how you can live to retirement. Don't you be so hard on me about my age. If you keep this up, you'll be on the street by the time you're my age. I have lived honestly, worked hard, everyone respects me, and you at 15 are already a fool. You'll stay like this for life. Look at the alcoholics in the neighborhood. They are all my age, but I do not have such great friends. And by the way, no one calls me a fool. Normal people respect me. This is how all the conversations between father and son ended. Nicholas would not be harsh. He always remembered that his son had been without his mother at an early age, and Melissa would never allow him to be rude to his son. Nicholas frequented the cemetery. Well, at least you helped me, dear. I do not cope with our son at all. Remember us. Come to him at least in his dreams. We do not know whether the boy was dreaming about his mother, but his behavior was not getting any better. And so the son, having graduated from school, could not boast of knowledge. There was nothing to dream about going to university. So, what are you going to do next? Nicholas asked his son. I'll find myself a job and everything I need. And you, if you didn't want to support children on your pension, you shouldn't have had them at that age. I should have been your grandson. Then everything would have been all right. I would have loved you like a grandfather, and my parents would have supported me. Normal, not elderly. There you go again. If me and your mother knew that such a miracle would be born, you wouldn't be fooling yourself. Well, let's see how you live, young and handsome. Justin managed to get a job that was not very prestigious and paid accordingly. Nicholas himself continued to work, but his son did not ask him for money when he graduated from high school. Both father and son were remarkably modest in this respect. Justin was ashamed to ask, while Nicholas offered. So as not to humiliate his son, he sometimes put small sums in his jacket pockets. He, of course, understood where the money was coming from, but he kept quiet. Neither gratitude nor rejection was forthcoming. As Justin was about to turn 18, Nicholas thought of a gift he would give his son, but he suddenly said he didn't want anything but money. I'll celebrate with my friends here at home while you're at work. Don't worry, it'll be fine. It's just a celebration, you know. I understand, of course, but make sure everything is really in order. I don't want a mess in my apartment. Nicholas, himself retired, worked 24 hours a day, 3 days a week, on duty at his factory. He did not have much faith that his son's birthday would go off without any trouble, but he could not forbid Justin to invite his friends home either. Firstly, his son might not listen to the ban, and secondly, to have a meeting somewhere else, which would be even worse. Let him do it at home, so he would clean up after the celebration. It was no big deal. But in the morning, when Nicholas came home from work, the neighbors said grudgingly, I already called the police, but what's the use? They came and left, and you've got noise all over the house again. People have children, old people. It was impossible to sleep. Oh, I'm sorry. It was my son's birthday. I'll deal with it, the man sighed. Nicholas did not find order at home. Everything that could be turned over was turned over. Everything that could be broken was broken. It would take more than a day to put the house in order. Before that, we had to escort those who couldn't leave on their own out of the house. Several drunken people slept in different corners of the apartment. So did the young master. It was impossible to quarrel with a son who was in such a state. For this, as well as for cleaning, Nicholas decided to wait until his son came to his senses. Justin began to feel better towards evening. So what, son? Do you call this order? The father asked. What's the big deal? I'll just clean it up. No big deal? Are you going to apologize to the neighbors too? Will you explain your behavior to the police? You know I'm ashamed to leave the house. Everyone knows my son is a drunkard and a troublemaker. What's the big deal? Everybody thinks you're my grandfather and always have. In first grade, they laughed that my grandpa and grandma took me to school. Nobody believed that you were my parents, and I was even embarrassed that you were so old. You bastard, all right with me, but at least don't say that about your mother. I'm an old man, and she died young, and always looked beautiful. You remember her young, and I don't. And what do you want me to do, drink tea and play checkers with my friends here in peace? And the neighbors are old men like you, so they got mad, the cops came, laughed at them, and that's it. They're young. Get out of my sight, you scoundrel. You may be young, but you behave like an abomination. I don't want to see you. You think I like the look of you? I've hated you for a long time, and let's put each other out of our misery. I'll pack up and leave. You live alone. If you want to die, call me. The apartment will be free, and then I'll come. No apartments for you. I'll find someone to bequeath them to, don't worry. That's how father and son parted. At that moment, Nicholas did not think that forever. Where was the son to go? He would calm down and come back. Who needed him anymore? But days went by, and days went by, and the son did not return and did not make himself known in any way. It was not until a month later that Nicholas became worried about his son. He did not want to report him to police. Surely he must have known people, or maybe he had rented a room somewhere. Nicholas decided to call his comrades to ask if they knew of Justin's fate. The first of them, a former classmate of his son's, reassured Nicholas. "Oh, he's fine. I saw him today. We drove to work together. You call tonight. He should be home." "Well, it's a good thing he's alive and, well, working." "Well, I don't need anything else, and I'm not going to call. It's not my fault. It's his. He hates me, you see. He's waiting for me to vacate the apartment, so let him wait. And I'll think about who to leave it to." That's what Nicholas thought, and then he calmed down. The son lives somewhere. He doesn't want to know his father, and that's all right. He remembered him, of course. He missed him, but he did not try to meet him. And he didn't even try to call. There were days and sometimes weeks when he did not remember his son, did not think about him at all. But before a holiday, and even such as Christmas, how not to remember? Maybe he'd stop by or at least call his father. Was it so hard? It must have been hard. For his son and for himself. It was with these thoughts that Nicholas finished decorating the tree. He turned on the garland, stepped aside, and admired it. It's nice, you can't tell. It's beautiful. The scent. Only family is not around, but everything is the same as before. Guests, there will be, I suppose. Neighbor Martha, also a lonely old woman, will come and say hello. Bruce, also an old man. Maybe somebody else will remember the old man. They'll be surprised, of course, as usual. "Well done. You've made a real holiday for yourself. Are you waiting for someone?" "I'm waiting for you," says the host, and invites him to the table. And in order to have a table, have to go to the store to buy some things. Wrote down on a piece of paper everything you need to cook, and then you'll forget the most important things. There's no time for thinking or remembering on the road. You have to watch your step. It's slippery outside. "There's a crowd in the store. Everyone's getting ready for the holiday. That much is clear," Nicholas remarked. He went to the cash register, paid, and went home. A girl of about 12 was shifting from foot to foot in front of his house. Nicholas remembered what he had seen as he walked toward the store. She was looking at house numbers and checking against some piece of paper, apparently looking for the right address. Going to visit someone, he thought. Another one, though not so little anymore. Apparently, she was looking for his entrance and couldn't get in. "Oh, what, honey? Are you cold?" he said to the girl. "Who are you going to? What apartment?" "Oh, here." She showed her piece of paper. "Only there's no one there." Nicholas put on his glasses and looked at the envelope. It had his address written on it, but it was the first time he had seen the girl. Very strange. "Oh, it's on the 3rd floor. Let's go." They reached the apartment. Nicholas opened the door with his key. "Well, come in, since you're here to see me. Tell me what business you have." He was afraid of strangers. He would never let anyone into the house. But here was a girl. She was just a child. Besides, she looks decent and is dressed well, and is curious about who she is. Get undressed. Come in. I'll put the kettle on now. You'll get warm." The girl took off her coat and hat, took off her shoes, and timidly entered the room. "Oh, what a beautiful tree you have!" Nicholas looked at her, was himself surprised by some vague memory that flashed through his mind. "I'm actually looking for Justin. Does he live here? Is he your son?" "He's a son, but he hasn't lived here for a long time. Why do you need him, and what's your name? Please tell me." "I'm Nicholas. Who are you?" "I'm Betty. And Justin, well, that's the story my mother told me, but not everything. I don't know much at all. Here's a letter. My mom gave it to me when they took her to the hospital." The girl held out the envelope with a letter to Nicholas. It was addressed to Justin, but in view of the circumstances, the old man saw fit to read it. "Justin, hello, it's Sharon, whom you've already forgotten. I'm sorry to remind you of me. I never would have done this if it weren't for my terminal illness. If you are reading this letter, I am no longer alive, and Betty, who will give it to you, is our daughter, Yes, I didn't have an abortion then. I hoped to raise the child on my own. But it didn't work out. I don't know how you'll feel about this, but now you're her only relative, and my only hope that Betty won't end up in an orphanage. Take care of her, please. This is my last and only request of you. Goodbye, Justin. Are you crying? Are you sick? The girl asked anxiously. The old man touched his face. It was indeed wet with tears. How long had it been since he cried? Oh, I feel good, Betty. He suddenly realized who the girl's eyes reminded him of, gazing rapturously at the Christmas tree. Melissa. His Melissa. That's who. Your mother writes in a letter that you are Justin's daughter. So that makes you my granddaughter. You tell me, how long ago your mother was taken away? How did you live without her? You have no other relatives? Oh, my mother and grandmother and I lived. I didn't know anything about my dad. We lived a good life, friendly, and then Grandma died suddenly, and Mom got sick soon after that. But when she got really sick, they took her to the hospital. She called me, gave me this letter, and told me to go to this address. She said it was very important, but I didn't go right away. I just forgot. I wasn't up to it. My neighbor took me in. She also took care of me, but she's too old now. She kept crying that they were going to take me to an orphanage. That's what I remembered about the letter. Where's Justin, my dad? I mean, is he coming soon? Oh, I don't know, honey. Maybe he'll never come. We had a fight a long time before you were born. He went away and didn't let me hear from him for 15 years. I sometimes hear from his friends that he's alive and well, but that's all I know. I don't know what to do now. You know, my mother and I also sometimes quarreled, and I was so mean, never went first to make up. I would sit and be offended, but Mommy would always come up, hug and talk, and we made up. We asked each other's forgiveness. She used to say that you shouldn't save up your grudges. It's very unhealthy. Maybe you should try it too. Not to ask forgiveness, but to tell her about me, to congratulate him on his holiday. Why don't I call my son and ask him how he's doing? My granddaughter is smarter than I am. Here's the thing. You're right, Betty. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere now. I'll call him and see how he's doing. I should tell him about you too. They won't let me have custody because I'm an old stranger and I have to make a call about it. Do you think he'll accept me as his daughter, or will he send me to an orphanage? I don't know. Well, he has to establish paternity, and then I don't even know if he has a family, children. Okay, I'll call him now. His son's cell phone number was given to him several years ago by a friend of his son's. Nicholas had never even tried to call his son, but he kept a piece of paper with a series of numbers written on it just in case. This was just such an occasion. He dialed the number, but after a few short beeps, he heard a mechanical message that the subscriber was not answering. Well, he's not answering. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he'll call back, or we'll call again. Well, you stay with me for now. Do you know your roommate's number? Make sure you call her. Does she know where you went? Oh, yes, I told her about the letter, and that it was important. I'll be sure to call her. She's waiting. Oh, that's fine. We'll celebrate Christmas together. We'll set the table. You see, I bought all kinds of groceries and delicacies. I'm used to celebrating Christmas the same way I did with my wife, your grandmother, Melissa. She died too, when your daddy was 12 years old, just like you are now. But maybe Justin will call, at least. Grandpa and granddaughter spent a couple of days before Christmas trying to get used to each other. It worked out pretty well. Not only did they get used to each other, but they felt a real kinship. Nicholas showed the girl a scrapbook of family photos, introduced her to all her relatives, and told her about her father's childhood. Betty talked about her life with her mother, about how she was left alone, and Justin still didn't call. But Nicholas hardly remembered it anymore either. He was happy to have a granddaughter. The little girl really looked like his late wife. And so it was, Christmas morning. Grandpa took Betty to the ice rink where they had a wonderful time. When they got home, the phone rang. The same number came up. Nicholas answered it, cautiously. His hands trembled. He was afraid the call was going to cut off. "Dad, is that you? Oh, I'm glad you called. I'm sorry I didn't call and answer. I was on the plane. I'm at the airport now. I'll be there in an hour." The father could not believe his happiness. Would he really see his son after the long separation? Would his granddaughter find a father? He didn't know if Justin was coming alone or with a family, or if he had anyone. That was yet to be known. An hour later, after 15 years of separation. "Betty, we're going to have guests," he informed the girl. "Let's get the tablecloth and the dishes and set them up, and I'll go cook something over there." His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. "Calm down," he ordered himself, "or you'll get a heart attack instead of a party." Yes, it's time to set the table. Soon they would see their most welcome guest. Suddenly the doorbell rang, and the grandfather and granddaughter flinched. "I'll get it," Nicholas said and hurried to the door. Yes, it was Justin. A grown man, well-looking and well-dressed, with a well-groomed beard, with a wheeled suitcase and some kind of bundles in his hands. Without saying anything, the men embraced. Tears welled up in both their eyes. "Grandpa, invite our guest into the room. It's drafty in here." Betty came out into the hallway. "Who's that, Daddy?" wondered Justin. "Oh, there's so much more to tell you. The daughter is yours. Remember Sharon, the girl you had? Well, this is her daughter. Hers and yours. And my granddaughter. Well, about that later. For now, get undressed. Let's go to the room, son." An astonished Justin took off his jacket and made his way to the room. "So," he said, looking around, "nothing has really changed here, just like when I was a kid. Even the toys on the tree and the dishes. Remember when I broke one of the plates from that service? I was 10 years old. Hello, Betty. Are you Sharon's daughter?" "Oh, yes, hello," the girl whispered. "About that later, Justin. For now, let's celebrate. Looks like we should be a family now." And so they did. Then Betty sat down to watch a program on TV, and father and son went into the kitchen to talk. "So, where did this Betty come from, and where is Sharon?" asked Justin. "Here, read it, and don't doubt it. The girl really does look like you." Justin hurriedly read the short letter. He put it on the table and was quiet. "I didn't know about that. Sharon and I had a fight too. I didn't really believe she was pregnant either, so I told her to get rid of the baby. She just turned around and left. With my temper, I did not think to find her, at least to talk. I got offended and left. I remember later, maybe because of her, I never got my life together. I'm still alone." "Well, you're not alone. You're the father, and I'm the grandfather. Well, that's what we found out. Tell me about yourself. How are you? Where do you live? Where do you work?" "I lived my life in all kinds of ways at first. I was selfish, and, well, I still am. I didn't think I'd offended you. I kept thinking everyone had to coddle me. So I've been going back and forth for a few years. Then there was Sharon. She was a good girl, serious. Wanted to be a teacher. I don't know if she did. She tried to raise me, too. I never liked that kind of thing. She kept saying I should study, get a proper profession. She also knew about our quarrel, but still said we should make up. I started talking to her once about marriage, and she said, 'What kind of husband are you?' So I got mad. I was stupid. A few days later, we meet, and she says she's pregnant, and now I kind of have to decide what we should do. And I acted like a jerk and gave her money for an abortion. But she left for good. And now I can't explain myself. I can't ask for forgiveness." "Yes, Justin, it's hard. Well, how did you go on living?" "Oh, well, yeah, I decided to achieve something after that, to come to Sharon and prove that I wasn't a lost cause. I got an education, got a job at a firm. I gave up the idea of bragging about my successes. That's just boyish. I remembered Sharon a lot, though. That she'd been married a long time. She forgot me. What am I going to do now? Apologize? I thought of you, too. I had a chance to come and see you. Even if you kicked me out, you'd be right. But I had to see you. And maybe you need some help. How are you? I'm retired. I don't need any help. I'm doing fine. And now that my granddaughter has been found, you need to work things out with the lawyers to recognize your paternity. Will you stay after the holidays to deal with it? What are you talking about, Dad? Sure, we'll do it right. And I'm not going to leave you now. I've, decided to start my own business here. Now I've got the knowledge and the money. We'll all live together. I hope we don't fight anymore, right? Well, as it happens, old people can be so mean. Nicholas laughed. Well, there's plenty of time to talk anyway. They went into the room and found Betty asleep sweetly in the armchair. Justin carefully lifted the girl in his arms and carried her to bed. After putting the girl down, he came back again with tears in his eyes. This is the first time I've carried my daughter in my arms, he said. The first time in 15 years I've celebrated Christmas with my father. That's how much I missed out because of my stupidity and stubbornness. It's all right, son. Let's not talk about the past. Now a new, happy life will begin, in which we will all be smarter. Now we know how easy it is to lose happiness.